Welcome to another edition of Cattle Chatter. I'm Susan Littlefield with the American Ag Network. Volatility, it just seems like this is a buzzword we are stuck with within this cattle complex, but there is a little bit of a silver lining. We call it the silver lining of a sow's ear, maybe. As we take a look at what's going on in this trade, Brad Kooima joins us. He is with Kooima Kooima Varilek out of Sioux Center, Iowa. And so I want to start with something positive, because obviously volatility is going to continue, and we'll dive more into that in a moment. But I made the joke about the sow's ear and that milking a silk purse out of that. Strong feeders continue, and the cattle and the cash, if anything, brings some good news. It's what's going on there.
I couldn't agree more. First, thanks for having me on, Susan. I enjoy this. I think that's a great place to start, because I don't think anybody associated with the cattle business isn't talking about that very thing. There was a couple of quite popular sale barn big sales yesterday, and everybody's buzzing about what the cattle brought there. Even in the South, Oak City called their market as much as 18 higher, I believe, or something like that. And so yes, the predominant thing here is this very, very strong cash feeder cattle market, which in turn obviously affects what goes on in the feeder cattle futures market, right? Because it's a cash settled index. And it is a little interesting that August, this is how confident the trader is. They go off a week from today, okay? And the last index, we're going to be at 347 and a half-ish tomorrow. So we're still about $8.50 above what the latest index is. So that would tell you that the trader is expecting these cash feeder cattle to trade to remain extremely strong as we finish up next week. So we've got extreme strength there, which is supportive to the market in general. And when that seems to happen, that also seems to support the back month of the live cattle futures market too. Now, cash market for fat cattle is no slouch either. And we're going to have to see how that plays out this week. It's a little slow developing. Usually by this time on Thursdays, you and I have got a kind of an idea what's going on, but it's a little slow to develop so far this week, Susan.
So how behind is the South at this point? Because like you and I were talking, there wasn't anything done last week. And here on a Thursday, we still haven't heard anything from them.
I know. I was hopeful that maybe the fact that they didn't trade many cattle it was hard to even quote what the market was last week. I guess 235-ish. Early in the week, there was a couple hundred head, or I don't know, several hundred head that traded at 237 to go north to a regional. But by the end of the week, it was kind of 235 or nothing, and mostly nothing. Up here, we were 245, and so $10 back again. And I find it curious. I do and I don't, I guess, because in my opinion, you've got the biggest regional imbalance in supply in modern history because of the border being closed.
Yep.
I'm talking about the difference between the supply of cattle in the north and the supply of cattle in Texas, the South generally, but Texas in particular. Texas is going to tomorrow probably have a report that tells us it's 9 straight months of record low placements. So the place where the biggest shortage is still getting $10 less.
Wow.
Than where we negotiate cattle. Do you suppose that has something to do with it? Nobody will ever make me believe differently. I don't care how many PhDs you got. So, I just find it very interesting, that the North and Iowa and Nebraska, particularly, those are the last two, strongholds for negotiated trade. And that's where the market's the best. So, way to go, guys. Don't forget it the next time that's the way it works. So,
what are you hearing from the feedlots in Texas? Obviously, with the border closed, they're not maybe getting that ready cattle supply that they've had in the past.
They're in crisis mode and beyond. I talked to some of the folks I know down there that whether people like the NCBA or not, I am involved there because I think either you're part of the problem or part of the solution, right? Visiting with those guys, and hey, that's where they source a lot of their cattle. You can imagine how many empty pens and how many empty feed yards total there are. That matter is not terribly simple. Okay. A lot of those cattle, ownership is established on some of those cattle long before they cross the border. So there's a scramble of, okay, how are we going to get them fed? Just the logistical structure of whether they can even feed them, and they're getting fed. Some of these cattle already not only got fed, but got slaughtered. That should have been up here by now. So it's caused an issue here for not just the state of Texas, but I think the country of Mexico is also having some issues with the what do we do with the stuff that we're slaughtering now? And I don't know. There's a lot going on, a lot of moving pieces. And then last week's press conference, of course, I people are asking me, Brad, when's it going to open? I wished I knew. I tell you what, you'd only have to know one thing. I do think that, reading the science of what cold weather does would give me some thought that maybe when that, gets going on for real, ground temperature of 46. I read one scientist say that kills the larva then, so I don't know how long it takes to get the ground temperature in South Texas to 46, but a lot of stuff in play there. I wish I had a more definitive, clear-cut explanation for you, but it's a big deal. I mean, when you're talking about record low placements for that stretch of time.
We do have a cattle on feed report that comes out on Friday afternoon. And if folks are watching this after the report, you'll be able to find the numbers on our website. But leading into this report, and you talk about these lower numbers we're seeing in Texas, how's that going to all kind of filter into the overall report?
Good question, and I think the pattern will be the same as a lot of the other reports that we've had, and that is that Texas, the low number. We can get a little bit of a preview on the Texas numbers because their associations do a nice job of guessing that. But if Texas is down 25% on placements, wouldn't surprise me or anyone else actually. So that has an impact, right, on the national number. The guesses are 98.1 on feed, so 2% less. And we're killing about 7% less. That's what year-to-date slaughter is. So you balance that for me sometime and explain it real slow so that I understand that something's a little bit out of whack there. Either you're backing up cattle or the numbers are wrong. Maybe it's both a little bit. Placement guess is 91.1. This month, that number's guess is quite a bit lower than last month. This number is probably a little more reasonable coming in, I would guess. And then the marketing number at 94.1. But I think the number that everybody will be looking at first is the placement number to see what again, another month of being closed at the border is going to mean for that. It's hard to see anything on that report that changes things unless they miss it by a long ways, right?
Well, we are seeing a lot of excitement continue in this box beef market. Shows that consumer demand is there, even though we're probably post Labor Day purchases at this point.
Well, I think we're right at that the tipping point maybe for procurement for the 4th of July. Or, excuse me. So what happened to the summer anyway?
I have no clue.
Labor Day weekend, and you can see what light kill does to the boxes. I mean, with that really light slaughter that we've had the last while, we've certainly put a prop underneath the boxes, which is good. And I think you're right to say that, generally speaking, the demand has held up quite good here. I'm anxious to see what happens when we get on the other side of Labor Day. Some of this, the price point stuff that I watch a lot, like the good hamburger, the wholesale level of that. I shouldn't say good hamburger. Well, it is good hamburger. Like we're talking the 80s, the 83s, the 90s, the higher price stuff, the leaner, right? Has really jumped the last while. And so I hope that we don't price our way out of where the consumer gets used to not, to walking by it instead of, picking it up. Really don't see that yet, and I think some of that is back to COVID stuff that I've mentioned 100 times already. And some of it's just because I think you've got a population that is really into protein and really into this protein as being a great source for that, the beef I'm talking about. So we'll continue to monitor that. Weight stayed pretty big. That's another thing on the horizon here a little bit. And of course, it's hard to trade cattle without keeping a bit of an eye on what's going on with the economy and the stock market and stuff like that too.
A lot of factors. As we get ready to wrap up this edition of Cattle Chatter, let's talk a little bit of yellow flag as you look at this market, the thing that we got to kind of keep a cautionary outlook on.
Well, to me, we've had so much leverage here at the feedlot level. It's been awesome. It's been fun. And, as long as we can maintain that kind of leverage, things are great, right? So what I wonder about is that, what I was talking about a few minutes ago of are we killing the available supply or are we not? In the north, we are super current. And I think that to say that we're holding cattle back here in the north would be wrong. At least that's based on my subjective opinion. Okay. Now when you look at the regional weights, as you break it down, the South is quite different. Texas and Kansas, both especially, way above a year ago. So it looks like, there the thing is, well, we'll have less cattle, we'll put more pounds on them. We'll try to keep the beef production number in line by having bigger cattle. So I think that's something that one needs to be careful about. And guys, these are levels that we've never been to before by any stretch of the imagination. So just the personality of the market reminds me of $8 corn. And hey, I feed cattle. I want them to go up every day, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I remember when we had $8 corn, and I thought, you talk to these people about, well, would you think about selling some? There's even a joke that takes me too long to tell, about the genie comes out of the lamp, you get one wish. I'd like corn to go to $8. Next year he does the same wish, and she says, well, that's what you wanted last year. And he goes, yeah, well, I didn't sell any. But the $8 corn didn't do a lot of people a lot of favors long term, and even when it was 8, we were going to go to 10, right? So I've said it 100 times. Stay friendly. That's fine. Buy some puts. Do something to make sure that this thing doesn't roll over. I worry that it's something that you and I can't even. I didn't know that we were going to start a fire at a plant in Holcomb, Kansas in 2019. Nobody knew that. That had a big deal, the effect on the market. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize COVID was going to be what it was when it started. We thought it was the flu, right? So just be diligent. I like where we're at. Market feels good. But we're also at levels we've never been before.
All right. Thanks so much, Brad. Best way for folks to get a hold of you?
712-722-0023.
All right. That's another edition of Cattle Chatter.
The views and opinions of this program are those of the hosts, guests, and callers. There is substantial risk of loss in trading futures and options, which you should carefully consider prior to trading.